After we do the towel drill, our transition is to what I call slow-motion wall drill or slow-mo wall drill. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the good mechanics we just did with the towel, do them slowly with the football before we go to the throwing progression and throw full speed or throw the football to a receiver. So to do that, we take and position the nose of the ball with the nose turned back. We want to make sure our elbow, shoulder, armpit height, and we start just like this. Okay? We have a receiver that's positioned about 6 yards away because we're doing short, soft tosses. We're only worried about the right sequence of movement for the throw. Okay? So we put the nose of the ball turned back for our left elbow tucked. We're going to take a short step to transfer our weight. When we do that, notice the ball comes off. And then I'm going to slowly rotate my hips till they get square. Then my hand should be behind my head. And then I'll slide my elbow forward. My pec pulls my elbow in at this position. When my elbow gets out in front, I'll soft toss it to a receiver. So it's slow-mo wall drill. And we take a short step to transfer our weight. Ball comes off. Slow, pause, and then throw the football softly to the receiver. Doing this allows us to train the right kinematic sequence or the right moving sequence for the throw. And we can tell if somebody's not throwing with hip-shoulder separation, because here's what you'd see. You see step, and then you see them turn everything at once. So what happens is we have to teach them to make sure that their hips go first, their hand stays back, and then their hand gets accelerated through the throwing motion. So this is slow motion wall drill. We do this as a transition between the towel drill and the throwing progression when we're going to throw to a receiver. This drill is called the slow motion wall drill, and it is done after we do the 4 core throwing mechanic drills with a towel and before we do the 4 core throwing mechanics with the football. Research has shown that slowing down and doing a sport skill in slow motion allows you to develop the right mental thoughts and train the neural circuit that those thoughts travel down to coordinate the body part movement more efficiently. So we're going to do the 6 basic positions of the throwing mechanics in slow motion. So I want to show you the whole drill, and then I'll go back and explain the 6 positions that you can see on the screen on the left-hand side. So here's slow motion wall drill. And that's the whole movement. Now let's go back and let's go over each position in slow motion. Okay? So the first position that we're going to do is we're going to do the load position. And in the load position, what we want to do is have the athlete take the nose of the ball and put it on a wall or some other type of object. And when we do this, we want to make sure that his elbow is armpit height or slightly higher. We also want to make sure that the tip of this ball is touching the wall and that his hand should be over his bicep. So actually this athlete could move back just a little bit farther to make sure his hand's over his bicep. We want the left arm tucked tight. We want both knees to have a slight bend in them. Our back foot is perpendicular to the target. And then we have nice tall posture. So that's the load position or our starting position and the things we want to look at before we start. This next position is the step position. So what he's going to do is he's going to take a short 6-inch step with his front foot. When he does this, you notice that his toe is pointing straight out and that the ball has come off the wall. So we don't want the athlete to leave the ball on the wall because then his hand, his elbow will have an angle with the ball on the wall where his tricep has already started to contract. And so then he's going to lose the ability to accelerate his elbow and wrist if he doesn't keep that hand over his bicep. Okay? So the ball comes off the wall when he takes his step. Notice his front elbow does not unbend. It stays tight right to his body. His posture stays nice and tall. And then that's the step position that we want to maintain. Once he gets there, he's going to rotate his back hip. You'll see his back foot, his back hip, and then his elbow and shoulder will start to rotate also. He's going to rotate those forward slowly. Okay, the slower the better. And he's going to maintain his nice tall balance and posture as he does this. Okay, so he rotates slowly. When he gets square to the target with his hips pointing square, he's going to stop and he's going to pause for 1 second. 1001. Okay, when he pauses, you want to make sure that his hand is behind his head. We don't want his hand to be even with his head. The reason we don't want that is because we want hip-shoulder separation. So you can see there's a degree of separation between his hips being square and his shoulder or where his arm is. You can see that angle right there, okay? So once he gets to this position, he pauses for a second. Then the next position is his elbow is going to lead the throw. So what you're going to see is you're going to see this pec area start pulling his arm forward. So that should be the first thing. When this happens, his arm should stay right above his armpit. So he should pull straight ahead and the elbow leads the throw. So now you see that the elbow's leading and you see again that here's his hand over his bicep. And the reason we have that is because now his tricep is fully extended and ready to flex and fire his elbow and his hand at the target. Okay, so that's the thing you're going to watch for once he gets to hips position and he's stable and pauses, is that pec pulls his arm in and leads the throw. The next position is you look for is release. This release needs to be out in front of his body, okay, so that his hips have rotated and then they've stopped, and now his whole arm and shoulder and hand are going to be linear going forward. All right, and that allows all this energy to travel from the ground up through his hip to his shoulder, into his elbow, and eventually into his hand. Okay, so the elbow release is out in front of the body. His knees are bent, which allows his hips to rotate fluidly and efficiently. We don't want his knees to unbend. And then as he releases the ball, you'll notice that the index finger and the middle finger are the last two fingers that come off release. Once he releases it, he's going to point. We get to the follow-through position. And he's going to point his elbow at the target, and then his fingertips follow to point at the target. And notice how still Witt has kept his head here as he's done this, okay? His head doesn't move at all. His body and posture stay stable, and that is how you can control ball flight perfectly, okay? So by doing this in slow motion, we were able to monitor those positions before he gets to the core 4 throwing progressions and work on those positions to be able to know that the mechanics are correct, and we've done it in slow motion. So here's the positions that we want him to be in still frame photos. So here's the step, here's the load, here's the hips, the elbow leading, here's the release, and here's the follow through. Okay? We'll play that full speed one more time. This is slow motion wall drill. We have each athlete do 10 reps, and then we move on to the 4 core throwing progression.
Renner's pass is complete.